Rice County Fair by celebrating Agriculture Day. Special thanks again to the sponsors of this broadcast so we can let other folks know what we're doing in Rice County, and maybe you'd like to get a program like that going in your county. Before we go any farther, I wanted to say a special thanks too to the Rice County Farm Bureau and the great breakfast that we had this morning. Well, some of us. I was at the studio. Let the record show I missed the free breakfast. And let's give them a round of applause. And we'd also like to have a special welcome from John DeVore, Rice County Fair Manager. I'm kind of sad, at least for a few more days, John.
Well, thank you, Jerry. And by the way, Jerry told you he didn't have breakfast, but they do have a plate for him in the back, so he is going to get his free breakfast. So, I don't know if you were here last year, but you remember me telling you that I had a dream, and I was dreaming, and I was going into heaven, and I met St. Peter at the gates, and he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, St. Peter, if we could have some great weather for the Rice County Fair, I'd really appreciate that." So lo and behold, last year we had pretty good weather, so I had that same dream again last night. Imagine that. And this time St. Peter was waiting for me, and he said, "Don't even bother asking, you got it." So here's the great weather for us for this year at the Rice County Fair.
And hopefully the dream says right after the fair, an inch or two of rain, no wind and no hail.
I know what you're complaining about. You always get it over your farm, so quit complaining. So I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight, or this afternoon. Great for you to be here. It's great that we can have this day, that we can honor everybody that's involved with agriculture, because that's what this Rice County Fair is all about. That's why we're here, to celebrate agriculture. We have displays, we have animals that come to the fair. What a great way to spend a week here at the Rice County Fair with celebrating agriculture. But before we get going, we all had a wonderful breakfast, but I know breakfast is past, but let's bow our heads and thank the Lord that He provided us with the food, provided us with the farmers that prepared the food for us, and the friends and family that can be here today. And also, Lord, please remember those that are no longer here with us today. May they rest in peace. Amen. So great. Let's go ahead, Jerry, and introduce our royalty.
Yep, their first official responsibility as Rice County Fair Ambassador. So just introduce yourself and make sure you mention your sponsor.
My name is Emma Dienst, and my sponsors are Matt and Cassie Steves.
I'm Taylor Belishek, and my sponsor is Two Rivers Tree Service.
Hi, my name's Allison Norton, and my sponsor is Flom Disposal.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Miller, and my sponsor is Camp Omega. Hi, my name is Caitlin, and my sponsors are my grandparents.
That's in that fine print on the bottom of being a parent or a grandparent. Other responsibilities as aside. Let's give these young ladies a round of applause for donating their time to promote the Rice County Fair.
Okay, so let's move along here as long as we're introducing individuals. Can I have any of my commissioners that are here, can you stand and wave to the crowd? All right, let's give these guys a hand, because I tell you, this group of individuals are what really makes this fair happen. They help us and they contribute, and we're very grateful that we do have the commissioners that we do have that support the fair. So thank you guys. So moving along, we have another couple special guests with us. We have Tom Peterson with us today. Tom, you want to stand up and come forward? And also next to him we have Daisha Hinkle. And Daisha is my gal that I work with through the Department of Agriculture. We have our agri-grants that they're handed out every year. If we apply for them, we get between $10,000 and $11,000. And I always ask Daisha for more, but never happens. And she had another person with her, and I told them that each one of them were going to have a speech, but I don't see her. Okay, she had to take a call.
Wasn't from the commissioner, was it?
And I was just kidding about the speech, so you can tell her to come back. So anyhow, and Daisha's also in charge of our legacy grants. That's the money that we get for putting on anything that's with entertainment, and so that plays for a lot of our displays that we have that people can learn from. So very grateful to work with her. It's been a pleasure working with you. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Tom.
All right, well, thanks, John. And I got to start by thanking John, and I really appreciate all your work for the Rice County Fair Board. And you know, at the state level, we need advocates with the legislature to talk about fairs, and we do millions of dollars in funding to county fairs around the state. And you would think like us that love fairs, that would be an easy sell. But to a lot of people, and even legislators, are not familiar with fairs. So you got to have people like John and who are great advocates for fairs, because fairs, you know, what fairs do is they connect, you know, folks and bring people together and tell the story. As a longtime animal exhibitor myself, the relationships that I make and the lessons that I still learn are just serve me well all the time, and I love attending fairs. You know, it's just a real honor to be here, and I'll just bring some quick greetings in Rice County. You think about Minnesota and being here today, a celebration of agriculture. And we think about Minnesota and agriculture, we think about that we're in the top 10, almost the top 5 in every major commodity. And you think about how Rice County fits in. Rice County really, if you look at, you know, corn and soybeans, where we're in the top, you know, obviously you have that. You know, Minnesota's the #1 turkey state. You have turkeys. #2 in hogs in the nation. You have hogs. You know, we're top in dairy. We have some sheep too, John. And so, you know, and then also a great local food scene that we see a lot of local food producers happening around. And so as a commissioner of agriculture, I'm kind of the chief cheerleader to try to help promote that and keep everything going as strong as we can, because we need all our farmers. And this year's a little tough for dairy and hogs, and we could use some rain definitely. And so we try to work with all of our partners and everybody to try to help our farmers as much as we can. So if I can ever be of any help to anybody, you know, I know lots of people in this room, and we want to do that because we want to make all our farmers strong, and we want to celebrate agriculture. So thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to walking around the fair a little bit later. Thanks.
Before you go, Tom, give him a round of applause, please. Now, a little story about Tom. You see, it was last fall, and John DeVork is trying to do a little educating, a little bit cattle and dairy, and so he's trying to educate me in the sheep industry. And he wanted me to go up to, what was it called, the Shepherd's Holiday?
Yeah.
Yep, and I got Louise to go along on a real date. So we're up there having a great time at the social time, and here's Tom Peterson. And I said, well, congratulations, you just got appointed for another 4 years as Commissioner of Agriculture. And Tom said, yep, but the only downside is 4 more years of Jerry. Here's your chance, Tom.
Yeah, I'll suffer through it, yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Well, John, let's move along. We got special award.
We do, but before I do that, I've got a few of my fair board members that are here. Can you stand? Come on, guys, don't be bashful. Stand up. These guys here, I wouldn't make my job easy. I wouldn't be able to put on the fair that I do. The fair is not me because I don't do the work, they do the work. So I appreciate you guys for being here today. And last but not least, I don't get to do this very often, but I'd like to introduce my wife, Bernie. If you could stand, please. So, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So, as Jerry said, we're going to move on to some awards. And my first award is, every year, I've been doing this, I think, for the last 7 or 8 years. I pick out an individual that's really helped me and guided me through the fair, given me input, advice, told me what I do wrong and told me what I do right. 9 times out of 10, it's what I did wrong, but anyhow. And so I always give him a special award, and I call it the Friend of the Fair. And so this year, the recipient, when I first took over this job, he was one of the first individuals that came forward to me and said, I want to help you in any way I can. And he did. And we come a long way. So, Dwayne, if you could stand up, please. This year, my friend of the fair is Dwayne Thomas. We've developed a special kind of relationship because Dwayne really stepped forward and he's guided me on different ways to advertise the fair. Dwayne is responsible for the jingle we have. He's responsible for "We'll See You There." It's a great Rice County Fair.
Where the city meets the farm.
And where the city meets the farm. These were all his ideas, so Dwayne, I want to present you with this clock. It's inscribed on it, friend of the fair.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And sometimes, let's just say, maybe the good Lord will forgive us if we maybe have a white lie or two on the way to have a surprise for someone. I even had to pull rank and get the boss to tell Dwayne he had to come and help Jerry engineer the program to make sure he was here and didn't know about it.
We did a great job, Jerry. So thank you everybody for being here. I'll turn it over to Jerry now and he'll take the program the rest of the way.
Let's give John a round of applause too for everybody. We always like to recognize all different awards and those involved in this big field of agriculture at this program. And a number of years ago, we added the Conservation Award. So where's Steve Haas? Steve, if you'd like to come up and help present the Conservation Awards, as I call them, deserving individuals. And I really enjoy working with the Rice County SWCD, the NRCS, because it always, in the public view that maybe don't know a lot about agriculture, maybe they can learn a little bit about our connection to the land and how we want to take care of it and make it better and pass it on to the next generation.
Thank you, Jerry, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. And thank you to Teresa DeMars for putting together these speeches, because she met with all the award winners in the last few weeks and did all the hard work for me. So I couldn't quite convince her to come up here and speak today, though. So
She didn't want to talk to Jerry either. That's real.
yeah, something like that. So without further ado, let's get started. First award is the Outstanding Conservationist Award, and that's going to go to the Johnson Family Farms. If you folks could come up and join me, please. While they're doing that, I'll get started. This award recognizes individuals, organizations, or others for outstanding accomplishments in implementing conservation practices and improving Minnesota's natural resources. It's my honor to present this year's award to the Johnson Family Farms of rural Richland Township in Rice County. The Johnson Family Farm grows corn, soybeans, hay, and has a small herd of beef cattle. For over 40 years, they've been working with the Rice SWCD and the Natural Resources Conservation Service to implement conservation practices on their farm. To control erosion, they have constructed over 25 water and sediment control basins. They also maintain an additional 20 sediment basins across the land they farm. Grass waterways have also been installed and maintained to control soil erosion and improve local water quality. The Johnsons also use no-till, vertical till, and reduced tillage across their farmland, as well as cover crops to reduce soil erosion. Last year they planted 300 acres of cover crops, including winter cereal rye, triticale, and tillage radishes. In addition, they utilize manure and nutrient management to efficiently apply nutrients to their crops. The Johnsons split apply their nitrogen, soil test the fields every few years, and test the manure for nutrients. They follow the University of Minnesota guidelines and best management practices in their application of nutrients. The Johnsons have also planted a tree windbreak to protect their farmstead and have installed filter strips along creeks that run through their property. Recently, they began to improve their woodlands by controlling European buckthorn. They also work diligently to prevent wild parsnip from growing on the properties they farm. Finally, the Johnsons planted native wildflowers and forbs in a pollinator planting on a hillside and interseeded their pasture with clover to improve habitat for pollinators through the Conservation Stewardship Program. The Johnsons' stewardship of their land and dedication to conservation and soil health make them an excellent choice for the 2023 Outstanding Conservationist Award. Congratulations. We do 3 awards annually at the Soil and Water Conservation District, and the Wildlife Enhancement Award is presented to individuals or organizations who do an exemplary job in implementing conservation practices that benefit Rice County wildlife. I am pleased to present this year's award to Dustin Dienst. Dustin, if you can come up, please. Dustin's passion for improving wildlife habitat and wetland conservation began on his family's farm, where he spent time hunting waterfowl as well as putting up various nesting boxes for birds. Many of you may also recognize Dustin as the chief of the Farubault Fire Department, but his career began in conservation. Back in the 1990s, now you're dating yourself there. I'm dating yourself. I started my career in the 1990s too, so. Dustin worked for the Rice SWCD, where he assisted with wetlands restoration, survey and design, and spot checking restored wetlands and grasslands in the Conservation and Reserve Program. Combining his childhood love for waterfowl and his work experiences in wetland restoration, Dustin began to work with local landowners to put up wood duck nest boxes. Year after year, he installed nest boxes in various restored wetlands. Today, he maintains around 100 nest boxes across Rice County. He also installs several nesting platforms for geese and nesting tubes for mallards each year. Dustin is a member of the Tri-Lake Sportsman's Club, where he also volunteers to build nest boxes. The club provides him the wood and materials, and he builds them at his shop with help from his family. Each year he builds around 100 nest boxes, which are given out to the Sportsman's Club members or are installed in new wetland restoration project areas. The result of his efforts is a healthy habitat for our local waterfowl. The Rice SWC thanks Dustin for his commitment to improving wildlife habitat in Rice County. He makes an outstanding choice for this year's 2023 Wildlife Enhancement Award. Congratulations.
I know he's not shy behind the microphone.
Well, thank you, Jerry. Thanks for everybody that came down here today. It's very humbling to be recognized for something that you have a passion for and you love to do. So I was pretty surprised when I got the call that this was happening, but thank you very much.
And Tara, I was corrected because Cassie reminded me to send all the award recipients over for pictures, but it's Tara that's taking the pictures.
All right. Thank you again, Jerry. Final award is the Forest Stewardship Award, and I'd like to ask the Ross family to come up. This award recognizes landowners or organizations who sustainably manage existing woodlands, restore native forest habitats, or practice best management practices in agroforestry. I'm pleased to present this year's award to the Ross family farm. For over 40 years, the Ross family has been managing their family 110-acre woodland in rural Forest Township near Lake Musaska. In the 1980s, their property was designated a tree farm, and they worked with Richard Peterson, who at the time was a DNR forester in the Fairbow field office, to improve their woodland. This included the planting of thousands of black walnut, red oak, and white pine trees. The family has continued to work with the DNR Forestry by enrolling their woodland in the Forest Stewardship Program. Their Forest Stewardship Plan was recently completed by Brad Gatzloff from Zumbro Valley Forestry. A key component of the Ross's Forest Stewardship Plan has been timber stand improvement. The family has spent many hours in their woodlands pruning their stand of walnut trees. Over the years, they have had several timber harvests, selecting trees that were less desirable or beginning to show stress. The result of their efforts is a beautiful, healthy woodland for wildlife such as deer, turkey, and many forest bird species. In addition, the Rosses have installed shallow ponds and prairie through the Conservation Reserve Program, and have also installed terraces around their 30 water and sediment control basins on their farmland. The Ross's family commitment and dedication to stewardship and forest conservation make them an excellent choice for selection of the 2023 Forest Stewardship Award. Congratulations.
And go over there. Do you want to say a word or two? Go over and smile pretty for your picture. Thanks again, Steve, for all the work that you do, and Teresa and the rest of your crew out there with the Rice County SWCD. I'd like to call on now Randy Hansen, the president of the Rice County Farm Bureau. Move on to the Century Awards and Sesquicentennial Awards. Century Farm, obviously 100 years continuous family ownership, at least 50 acres in size.
Thank you, Jerry. I'd like to welcome everybody for coming today, and I'd like to give Dan Punker Insurance. His crew came down, helped feed, serve us today, and if you're a Farm Bureau member, you help provide the food. So let's give them a hand. Our Century Farm winners this year is the PV Farm. And we'd like to present this, and then maybe you can just maybe go on and explain who your parents were, your grandparents, and when you started.
Thank you for that. And our families had the land since just prior to the 1900s. My great-great-grandfather was Julius Prevey. They came over from Germany and followed up with son Edward and my dad Elmer, and then currently us and next generations to come.
Thank you very much. Here's your award. Thank you very much. And I'd like to remind everybody too, the past winners and current winners, over at the Gillen building, there's plaques in there. So if you want to see who's won in the past, and maybe you can put your name up there someday. The next would be the 150 years, Ron Summers and Ruth Summers Farm. And I'll tell you a little story about Ron. This is dating myself, but it's not as far back as what Jerry is. So anyway, 1975, he was an egg teacher in Farubault here, and I was a green hand, an FFA. So Ron was there for 3 years. He left my senior year. He went to the Votech here in Farubault to teach a farm operation management course. So I graduated. Well, then I had Ron Summers as my teacher there too. So it was, we really enjoyed Ron. He was always took us to all the meets for FFA and all the other stuff, so he did a great job. And then as we got older, he took us to other places. So he was a great teacher, and now with that,
I couldn't pass this up, and it's a good thing that I'm a good-natured guy and I don't carry a grudge. Going back to the 70s, when I was a member of the Wells Easton FFA, we were bound and determined that we were going to knock off Fairbault in the parliamentary procedure contest. And we studied and we studied, and we practiced and we practiced, and we could never take them down. So it's a good thing that I don't carry a grudge, but I didn't like Fairbault a whole lot back in that day.
so I think you've got your award. Did you get everything in the mail, I think? Plaque in the mail. Yeah. So you got the plaque in the mail, and then Ron, I talked to Ron, he's going to give a little summary of when it started and all the people. So, and as a teacher, he can tell us this. So.
And put it in perspective, 100 years is one thing, so think about that. Those families hung on to the land during the Depression. And I'll go back 150 years. I'll never forget what my grandfather told me when he was farming during the Depression. He said he had neighbors that had their farms paid for, and they couldn't make enough money to pay the real estate taxes, and they lost their farms. That's tough times. But he told me the ones that were able to hang on to their land, they were wealthy again. Land is enduring wealth. And obviously families that have hung on to the land over the generations feel the same way as my grandfather did.
Thank you, Jerry. And it's an honor for Ruth and I to accept this recognition on behalf of our family. We had some great years here in Farubault teaching here and in the school system at the Tech College. That was good. I put together some notes that talk a little bit about our farm. Ruth said if people in the back start slipping out the side door, cut it short. So I'm going to try to do that. I'll be watching for a sign of I better shut it down. I remember Jim from back in school too, so it's really fun to get together and see some former students that I had who are now successful farmers and leaders in the community. I appreciate it. It's good. But here's a little bit about the Summers Farm, maybe a little bit too much, but it gives a little perspective about how much times change. And they do change. They change dramatically, a little bit at a time, but it counts up over 50 or 100 or 150 years. The Summers Farm in Section 20 of Northfield Township, Rice County, has been in the family for nearly 151 years. An 80-acre farm was purchased by Frederick L. Summers, 80 acres for $2,000 for the whole 80 acres, back when he turned 21. Frederick Summers turned 21. He married Mary Miller in 1872. Frederick was the eldest son of Frederick A. Summers, his dad had the same name, and Rosine Schultz Summers. They'd come to America with his parents in 1852, leaving Germany when young Frederick was only a year old. He grew up on the family's original homestead in Section 15, about 3 miles from the farm that we're talking about, our home farm. And that farm is now the site of Red Barn Pizza, if you're familiar with that, over in the Northfield area. That's the original Summers homestead from 1855. There was hard work and joy and heartbreak in the Summers family in the 3 years after purchasing that farm. Young Frederick and his bride had 2 children. But then young Frederick became ill and died at the age of 24 in 1875. His mother, Rosine, 45 years old, died that same fall, when the youngest of her 11 children was only 3 years old. So, very difficult times. The older children took care of the younger siblings and helped with the farm work. After the death of his wife and oldest son, Frederick Sr. purchased the farm where we now live, from young Frederick's estate. Young Frederick's wife remarried and with her children and new husband lived in the Waseca area. Frederick's second son, John, moved to the farm in Section 20, our farm, and lived there with his wife until they purchased a farm of their own. Then another son, George, my grandfather, at the age of 20, took over the operation of that 80-acre farm. 1 year later, his father died, and George inherited 1/11 of that farm. And eventually he became the owner of the entire farm. He married Louise Pfeiffer, a young school teacher who had come from Farubault to teach in the local country school. Louise's father was a stonemason here in Farubault. In fact, he worked on the stone tower of the Cathedral of a Merciful Savior. He also worked on stone buildings over at Shattuck. So that was my great-grandfather on my grandmother's side. They were active in the Farubault community. In the 1920s, George and Louise, my grandfather and his wife, replaced their dilapidated barn and with a modern dairy barn and their old squatter's shack with a new 2-story masonry home. And both of those buildings are still standing on the farm. With an eye to the future, they had their house wired for electricity in 1924 when they built their house, although they wouldn't have electricity on the farm until 1938. So the house was wired 14 years before they even had electricity. My father became active in a local cooperative, Cannon Valley Power and Light, that merged with Steel Waseca Cooperative Electric and brought electricity to rural parts of our area in 1938. George sold the farm to his sons Donald and Harold, my dad and my uncle, in 1945. Back in the Donald and Harold continued to improve the farming operation. They kept their dairy herd and expanded their dairy herd, improving it through the Dairy Herd Improvement Association. And they used artificial insemination to improve the genetics of their herd. They moved to grade A milk production and bulk milk handling. And so times changed. Things that we take for granted happened a little bit at a time over the years. They used tile drainage, soil tests, hybrid seed corn, commercial fertilizers, livestock manure, and to manage and improve their crop production program. Changed from harvesting ear corn and using a threshing machine to use of a combine. Upon the death of his brother Harold, ownership of the farm went to Donald, and he farmed there for a time and then rented land to a neighbor. When Donald died in 1983, his sons, myself, Ronald, and my brother Dale became owners of the farm and continued to have the farm operated by a renter. And at that time, I was an agricultural educator. Agriculture continued to change. Technological changes allowed farmers to farm many more acres. Where once nearly every farm in the local area had dairy animals, that changed dramatically. And few farms remained in dairy production. This contributed to a change in crops grown for livestock feed, like small grains and pasture and alfalfa hay. There just wasn't as much of that anymore. There wasn't a need for it. This contributed, these changes resulted in more intensive row crop production, which increased the threat of water erosion and resulted in greater need for commercial fertilizers. Because of this threat, the Summers worked with soil conservationists. Steve Poss is here this morning and made a presentation, and he was instrumental in helping us put in sediment basins and work with erosion control practices to allow us to move to more intensive crop farming. Since his retirement, Ron and Ruth have made their home on the farm that is now in the family for over 150 years. The Summers family, to go back a step, one generation further back, the Summers family arrived in the Northfield area before the purchase of this farm in Section 20. Frederick A., born in 1821 in the province of Mecklenburg-Schwerin, Germany, married Rosine Schultz in 1830. They came to the United States in about 1849. Because of difficult economic conditions, they made the decision to leave Germany with their one-year-old son and come to America with the prospects of never seeing their family members again. Just think how tough things must have been for them to make that difficult decision. When they were out, they sailed from the port of Hamburg, Germany, and a deadly calm with no wind to fill their sails threatened to leave them marooned in the mid-Atlantic. There was fear that their food supply and water supply would be exhausted. What they expected to be a 6-week trip turned into a 9-week journey before they reached Quebec, Canada. From there, they made their way to Joliet, Illinois, where Frederick worked for the railroad for 3 years, during which a second son, John, was born, and the next phase of their lives began. In the spring of 1855, they purchased a wagon and a team of oxen, and with their 2 cows, a breaking plow, and a spinning wheel and meager possessions, they joined 6 other families who had made similar preparations and departed for Minnesota. It took them about 6 weeks to get from Joliet, Illinois, near Chicago, to the Northfield area. At that time, the city of Northfield consisted of 1 log house, the home of John and Ann North and their family. It was at that summer that North would construct a sawmill along the Cannon River. The Summers settled in a parcel of land in Section 15 of Northfield Township, the site, as I mentioned, of the Red Barn Pizza today. And of course, it was the Summers family, the first family to live there, and the Red Barn Pizza has operated by the Winters family. And you just can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's unbelievable. The Summers selected a parcel of land in Section 15, and they purchased it by preemption. The township today is referred to as Northfield Township and is located in the southeast of the city of Northfield. They built a one-room log house with one window, which had six 8 by 10 panes of glass. The farming adventure began, and later they added a second room to their log house. In 1864, Frederick purchased his first horses. So oxen were no longer the source of farm power. Oxen until 1964, then horses. They got modern. In 1865, they built a two-story frame house with several spacious rooms. They eventually had 11 children, all of whom lived to adulthood. Back in Germany, Rosine's father, Jim, I see you still haven't left. Back in Germany, Rosine's father, Christian Schultz, born in 1799, back when John Adams was president of the United States, right after George Washington. Christian Schultz, Rosine's father, decided to leave. His wife passed away. They decided to come to America so he could see his daughter again. And he brought with him two of his younger daughters, who later married area farmers. Some years later, Christian died and is buried in a nearby cemetery in the Northfield area, where Frederick and Rosine would ultimately be buried. It was at the original Summers farm where the family gathered in 1955 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of their 1855 arrival in Minnesota. That farm remained in the family until the 1980s. In 2005, over 300 descendants of Rosine and Frederick Summers gathered at Ruth's and my farm for an anniversary. So we had a celebration of the 150th anniversary of the family being in Rice County in 2005. So that's a little bit about history. I hope I didn't bore you too much, but I think there's some fascinating things that when we put it in perspective over 150 years, to think of getting modern and moving from oxen to horses and getting electricity and many of those other things. So again, I'll say it's an honor to receive this recognition on behalf of our family, and I thank you, Randy, for presenting it. I hope I didn't put too many people to sleep, but thank you. And Jerry, thank you.
And a special thanks to the Minnesota Farm Bureau and the Minnesota State Fair for sponsoring the Century Farm Program. And the Sesquicentennial Program, Randy, is just the Minnesota Farm Bureau.
Yep, that's right. And we enjoy doing it because there's not that many on there, so we need some more on the bike. We have lots of plaques just to put your name up there. So if you know anybody that has it, bring mine. So thank you.
All right, let's move along to the Extension Award of the University of Minnesota Farm Family of the Year. Extension educator Claire LeCan and Rice and Steele County is here. Claire, before we get into your official job, put on your job as the president of the Fairbolt Chamber of Commerce Agribusiness Committee that helps organize this program along with the Rice County Fair. And also we better get a thanks out to the Nearstrand Agri Center. Doug Gilbertson, we had some of the crew here, didn't we, from Nearstrand Agri Center? Anyway, stand up. And there's Jay over there. Let's thank Doug and his crew, Nearstrand Agri Center, for sponsoring this award since its inception back, about 12 years ago now, I think. But Clark?
Yep, thanks for a quick opportunity to just give you a little background on our Agribusiness Committee at the Fairboult Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm the current chair of the committee, and our mission and purpose is to promote ag education and careers and advance and promote relationships between farm and business. So the Chamber has been really helpful in putting on this program, and if you're interested in becoming a member of the Agribusiness Committee, please reach out to Cassie Steves at the Chamber. So now I'll switch hats, and I'm honored to share that the Jeff and Catherine Schultz family was selected as Rice County's 2023 Farm Family of the Year. In 1979, Jeff started farming, raising crops and finishing feeder pigs. Jeff and Catherine Schultz were married in 1995 and moved to Jeff's grandparents' farm. Jeff's grandparents, Albert and Edna Schultz, bought this farm in 1937 and built every building. It was bare ground when they purchased it. In the height of the Great Depression, they saved money by constructing the buildings themselves. Albert and Edna milked cows, finished dairy steers, raised farrow to finish hogs, had ducks, geese, and chickens for meat and eggs. They had a little bit of everything, maybe not honeybees, that's the one thing missing. Currently on the farm, Jeff and Catherine's children, Madeline, Hank, and Cal, spearhead the cow-calf operation. They make the management decisions and perform all the marketing. In fact, they traveled the Midwest promoting their genetics while looking for opportunities to expand the operation with hopes of making it a full-time venture. Madeline and Hank work for the Farubault School District while Cal is a student at Oklahoma State University. All three have been very active in 4-H and FFA and have judged livestock shows since or while in college. Jeff is a farm business management instructor at South Central College here in Farubault. Jeff and Catherine were 4-H adult leaders, project development committee members, and Project Bowl coaches. Jeff has also been a school board member and church trustee. The members of the Schultz family really are deeply involved in their agricultural community. Jeff serves or has served on several committees, including the Rice County Pork Producers. I think you were setting up the stand this morning before breakfast. The Dakota Rice, Corn, and Soybean Growers, the Rice County Extension Committee, the National Farm and Ranch Business Management Education Association, and the Farubault FFA Advisory Board. Families are selected as Farm Family of the Year by their local extension committees for demonstrating commitment to enhancing and supporting agriculture and agricultural production. These farm families are a major driver of Minnesota's economy and the vitality of Minnesota's rural communities. So the University of Minnesota and Rice County are proud to recognize the Schultz family's contributions to agriculture and their community. Please join me in another round of applause.
I know you weren't shy, Jeff.
I'm just going to say our family is very humbled and honored to receive this award. We were very surprised and grateful. Thank you.
Now, before you go, it's another good reason that I don't carry a grudge against the Farubault FFA. When I started here 26 years ago, I kind of lost touch and I was stunned. For one of the best programs in the state, there wasn't an FFA program, and now we have an FFA program in Farubault, thanks to Madeline. One more thing as long as I have the mic, that it was really fascinating when Ron went back through the history and what our forefathers persevered through. And when you think about what we do, raising food and fiber and fuel for a hungry nation and a hungry world, I always argue the most important thing that comes from farms, families raised on a farm, is the kids. I watched these 3 kids grow up. I'm not surprised that they turned out the way they did, knowing mom and dad, but you should be proud, Jeff and Catherine. All right, your turn, Catherine. You're the shy one.
Thank you, Jerry.
Well, let's give the crew another round of applause. We have one more award, the biggest award. Greg, if you'd like to come up, the Rice County Agriculture Hall of Fame. And I'm happy to say that I got to know this year's inductees. When I first started at KDH, I'll talk about a champion for agriculture. What specifically sticks out in my mind about Don and Ryan Grubb was passion to get the ethanol industry going, and they really helped.
Yes, they did, Jerry, and it's amazing each year I help do this. When we get to this point with the nominees, it's as though I've known the family for so long, because when I talk to them, it mirrors my experiences growing up, whether on a large or a small farm. And talking about the Grubbs.
Oh, why don't the Grubb family come on up?
Yes, I was going to say, if all the Grubb family could please come up, say a few words about their parents, Donald and Diane. They started out by buying a small farm located southeast of Farubault near the Nature Center, raising sheep, cattle, and hogs. Don and Diane raised 3 daughters and 1 son, Rebecca, Brenda, Lisa, and Daniel. with Brenda still living on the home farm. They were all active in 4-H and FFA. Donald worked at the Rice County Hospital, previously known as the State Hospital, for 23 years, and occasionally would get an unwelcome visitor coming down the railroad tracks. One night, Mom goes out to feed the animals, and there's one hiding under the feed bunk, and she goes, oh. And later on, Donald became a crop seed salesman for AgriPro and Legend Seeds. Diane enjoyed providing many farmers lunch at the seed days that Don would host on the farm. And Don was a founding and active and promoting member of the Rice Dakota Corn Growers Association, which ultimately became the Corn and Soybean Growers Association for the two counties. In addition, Don and Diane helped start the Farubault Farmers Market, selling produce, along with maple syrup and Diane's baked goods. Diane was quite proud to be known as the Pie Lady and won grand champion occasionally for her cinnamon rolls at the fair. And the Grubbs also operated the Grub Wagon for several years, providing food, beverages at the auctions and events. And Don is also known as Harpin' Don for his activities as a well-known musician. And he hosted this bluegrass festival for about 11 years on the farm. And what I'd like to do now is have Jeff Schultz just come up for a few minutes and talk about his involvement with the corn growers.
Thank you, Greg. First of all, I want to thank the Chamber for offering this and congratulate the Grubb family. Don and Diane were very, very good friends of ours. My daughter says, Jeff, or Dad, sometimes we just want the answer. We don't want to hear the story. Well, then I give her the answer and then she wants an explanation, so then I got to give her the story. So you're going to get the story, but I'm going to try to make it brief. In the last 10 years, the Dakota Rice, Corn, and Soybean Growers has donated about $75,000 in scholarships, about $130,000 in donations to youth groups, 4-H clubs, FFA members, Girl Scouts. We've probably talked to 15 to 20,000 third graders about ag in the classroom. And all of this is because this man, Don Grubb, and 8 other members in 1989 cared enough about the corn industry to start the Rice County Corn Growers. And it's because of that involvement that we are where we are today. Without Don, it wouldn't have happened. Don was a huge promoter of ethanol, so much so that he ended up on the state board and was kind of in charge of that. He was in charge of their billboard campaign. One of the more popular billboards back then, if you think about the late 80s and early 90s, was a billboard with a ship being escorted by a military personnel boat with the caption, "Our fuel doesn't need military escorts." One of his most famous slogans that many of us local people know of that didn't get approved is he wanted to put a billboard of an iron oil sheik next to an American farmer and say, "Who do you trust?" That one didn't pass muster. So, obviously Don was very popular in bluegrass. Anybody that knew him knew that he did that. He told me one time that he was often asked how many songs did he know by heart, and he said him and Diane quit counting or quit writing titles at 400. And Don played strictly by ear. One of his favorite instruments was a washtub bass with a stick and a string, and he would just adjust the tone by moving the stick back and forth. So that was pretty cool. He did have these jamborees. I believe it started with their 40th wedding anniversary, and then it went for 11 or 13 years. Diane always worked, the wonderful cook, always worried about how the heck am I going to feed all these people on Sunday morning breakfast. Well, if you knew Diane, cooking was not a problem. They ate very well. But one of the biggest jokes Don ever shared about that jamboree, if anybody remembers Jim Trebelhorn, who also just recently passed, Don would say, "This is probably the only jamboree bluegrass festival where somebody brings a motorhome worth more than my farm." And if you know Jim's motorhome, you recognize that story because it was pretty fancy. The other probably saying that I remember the most of Don, like I said, he was my dad's best friend. He was sharing a story about growing up as a child in Iowa, and one of the neighbors came over, and he remembers the neighbor telling his mother, he said, "Mrs. Grubb, I just want to compliment you on what wonderful children you have." And Don told me, he said, "I'll never forget my mother's response." And she said, "Thank you. We've been very blessed that we've been very lucky that God blessed us with children that haven't caused us many problems." And I've used that for a lot of people. Jerry complimented our kids. It's giving credit where credit is due. I want to tell people, if you see somebody that was a big factor in agriculture, nominate them. Art Mattson harps me all the time. We need nominations. I saw Don last year and I'm like, he needs to be in there, and then I just prayed, please live until next year. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but Becky, Brenda, Dan and Lisa aren't here. I'm proud to call you friends, and congratulations.
Thank you, Jeff, for doing that. And then I contacted Legend Seed, and they wanted an opportunity to also say a word about Don. Steve, would you like to come up?
Well, yes, congratulations. As Jeff said, congratulations. I'm the area rep and product manager for Legend Seeds. Been here for 12 years. I didn't get to know your dad when I first started, but when I worked this area, when I very first started Legend Seeds, I heard his name a lot. And the things that I heard are all things that Jeff expounded on as far as his integrity and how good of a person was and his involvement in agriculture. So from what I can tell and what I've heard today, obviously a very honoring and humbling opportunity for you guys to have this experience, to have him entered into this Hall of Fame in Rice County. So we're honored that he was part of Legend Seeds when he was a dealer with us, and he definitely helped spur the growth that we've had in this area. So again, thank you for that, and again, congratulations to your family.
Thank you much, Steve and Jeff, for coming up. Did any of the Grubbs want to say a few words about?
I'm just going to say something really quick. I'm sure my dad would be very proud to have this award because he was really honored to be a farmer. He loved being a farmer. He was so proud that he was in the grassroots of the ethanol push. We heard a lot about it every time we talked, and at that time it's like, oh, okay, you just have some pipe dream maybe. But no, I'm sure he's very thankful. Too bad he's not here to be with us, but I'm sure he's shining down up there, watching his grandkids show sheep. I'm hoping we're downwind, because we've been in the sheep barn all morning, and the rest of my family is down there showing right now. So he'd be very proud to see that we're carrying on his tradition of farming. Thank you.
I just want to thank the Agribusiness Chamber Committee for this award for Mom and Dad, and I guess the upside is that they're together now watching the family get the award for them. And I just want to leave you with this, because I know Dad would want it because he was such an entertainer, that it's so nice to see all of you beautiful people out here. There's a beautiful petunia and a sunflower, and oh, there's a couple of weeds over there. We better get the hoe out. Thank you again so much. And yes, Jeff, I remember, I think it was probably 3 days a week that Jeff's dad would come up and we'd sit and listen to the stories between them. And I guess it all rubbed off because they lived just down the road, and so thankful for your family too, and congratulations to you also.
Well, let's give the Grubb family another round of applause. Everybody take your picture. And just let the record show, I used to interview Steve Ressler growing up when he had to look up to me. Oh, we wanted to say again, special thank you to the Fairbolt Chamber of Commerce and the Agribusiness Committee, the Rice County Fair, and again, the Near Strand Agri Center. Doug and his crew, Jay is here, and thank them for stepping up and saying we want to sponsor this Hall of Fame program. here at the Rice County Fair. And I also wanted to say a special thank you to Cassie over there at the Chamber, because we have lots of ideas, but she's the one that kind of keeps us organized and makes sure we get everything done. So let's give Cassie and the Chamber a round of applause. And of course, special thanks too to the Rice County Fair for allowing us to do this every year. And now I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have one more award to present. And all right, confession is good for the soul. Jerry did a couple more white lies to keep it a surprise.
Hi, I'm Tara Longevin, and I am past president of the Rice County Fair Board. I've been involved with the Rice County Fair for, well, pretty much all my life. I get the joy of always celebrating my birthday around the fair. But the best thing about the fair is all the people that we work with and everybody. And one person that has been instrumental in the last 10 years as the manager is John Dvorak. He hails from the Webster area. He has been huge in the sheep community and just helping with everything around the fair. He's brought in some of the Hispanic rodeos and just has a great rapport with all of the vendors and the members around the fair. I could probably go on, and you know, but John, we just want to thank you. So if you would come up here, please. We want to thank you for all of your years. We have a little plaque to thank you, and yeah, John, you know what? You've had a great 10 years, and we're going to have a transition year, and we're looking forward to new management coming in too. Change is always good. We can do it. John, you change some things up, and the next person will also probably do some changes. And I'm going to pass it on. Well, you want to say something?
Sure. Well, thank you, Tara. Wow, I'm speechless.
That was a plan.
It's been a great run. I've had a fantastic team that I've worked with. I would bring ideas to the fair board, and it wasn't me that did the work, it was the fair board that did the work. They bought into what I was telling them. Can't believe it, but they did. They were the ones that made everything happen. They were the worker bees. I told them what my vision was, and they made it happen. And this definitely wouldn't be as successful as it was. It wasn't just me, it was the whole fair board that did it. It's going to be a hard thing to swallow not to be here next year. I will be here. I'll plan to stay on the board. But I figured it was just time for me to pass the reign over to another person, somebody that has better and more energetic ideas than I had. And I hope that the fair continues to grow, and I hope it grows more so than what I brought it to, because then for sure we can assure that the Rice County Fair is going to keep growing. I also want to thank all of you for coming out here, supporting the fair, being part of agriculture. I'm a big advocate for agriculture. Tom can attest to that, because I think Tom and I have each other's phone number on speed dial. We communicate, and he's been great to work with Tom. Dacia, all these buildings that got put up here while I was here, it was because of you and your organization that made that happen. So I thank you, and thank everybody from the bottom of my heart, my wife and my family. You've been my rock, and have always supported me through the good times and the bad times. Thank you.
So now we can have Peter come up. Peter. The Rice County Fair Board is excited to announce Peter Van Sluis as our incoming manager. Peter brings a wealth of experience to our team, having worked with the International Festival for many years. We are excited to have Peter join our team as manager. Peter's experience, expertise, and skills will be invaluable as we work together to achieve our goals. I encourage all of you to take the opportunity to introduce yourselves to Peter and welcome him to the fair.
Thank you. It's kind of ironic that I'm introduced at the best of the best because unlike John, who has proven all those years, 10 years and before that on the fair board, I've just started recently and I'm learning. I'm drinking from the fire hose. And I am really looking forward to meeting everyone. And I'm not even going to thank anybody because there's so many people, hundreds of volunteers and vendors and competitors and presenters and fair board and volunteers. It's unbelievable how many people are here to make this happen. So I'm looking forward to meeting everyone and learning, and hope I'm doing at least as good as a job as John, and for many years to come. So thank you very much.
Let's give John and our new fair board manager a round of applause. Did he see in the fine print he had to work with characters like me at the studio? Did you tell him that, John? I didn't think so. Let's give him a round of applause. Tara's taking picture. And once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors so that I could broadcast this live, hoping maybe folks are listening in another county and they don't have a program like this, they could get it going. Rice County Mutual Insurance, Ivy Food Store in Fairbolt, Rice County SWCD, Warner Farm Seed Dentist, and the Craig Hill Insurance Agency in Near Strand. So with that, I guess we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all folks for being here. Before you go, we have nomination forms for the Rice County Agriculture Hall of Fame programs. If you have someone in mind now, start working on it now and get that application in, and maybe we'll recognize them at the 2024 Rice County Fair.